Hi, Mike. I'll add you as a speaker.
Hey Michael, hey Bidan, thanks for joining in.
Hi, Bidan. I sent you also a request as a speaker. Thank you for joining us.
Hey, excited to be here today. Thanks for the invite.
It's our pleasure. And for everybody listening, Merry Christmas and enjoy your holidays for those who celebrate. All right. Shashank, are we waiting for Antonio from Sentient, right? Or we can start with the spaces.
We can just wait for a minute. He'll be replacing Sachi. She had to take a flight, so he'll be filling in for Sentient.
Awesome. Yeah, sure thing. Meanwhile, I want to say hello to many of the new community members that joined us in the last few weeks. I recognize many of you, and thank you for coming, guys. It's going to be an awesome session, and can't wait to get started.
Let's start. Antonio will join over time.
Awesome. Okay, guys. So here today's session, it's going to be about the infrastructures of AI agents. A lot of talk has been talked about, AI agents, YAP, and everything. So I have a question for the speakers. But first, do you guys mind introducing yourself a little bit to our community? Some of us OGs know you like very well, but you have some new users, and would be great for them to get to know you.
I think Michael can go first.
Hey, Michael, if you don't mind, tell us a little bit about Zero Gravity and what you guys are building.
Oh, maybe while we wait for Michael, Bidan can speak about him.
Perfect.
Yeah, happy to. Michael, if you're speaking, and we cannot hear you because you're muted. Just wanted to say that. But for myself, my name is Bidhan, founder of Bagel, and we make open source monetizable. And what that means is that we have mixed bunch of machine learning and cryptographic technologies together to build this totally new model architecture, which can be almost a drop-in replacement for the regular open source AI model architecture, which allows open source developers to contribute to the models, and then when that model generates revenue, they get attributed a portion of that back, depending on how much they contributed to it. And in my previous life, I used to be an engineer. Been doing engineering at different organizations in machine learning for over a decade. And thank you for having me today.
Awesome. Thank you for joining us. It's really a pleasure. I see Mike is reconnecting. Shashank, do you mind telling our audience a little bit about yourself and a little bit why you started the company and the changes we're making?
Yeah, sure. So whoever is joining again, thank you guys for being here. We aim to organize these sessions every week and talk about different parts of CryptoX AI. Since it's a huge area and there is no one resource where you can find all the knowledge. So I'm founder and CEO of Fraction AI, and we create high quality label data sets for fine tuning AI models. For creating any AI model, you need three things: data, compute, and the model itself. It's super difficult to get data right now because all of it is gate kept within like 3 to 4 companies. So we wanted to change that, and that's why started Fraction AI. Before this, I used to work at big tech companies as ML researchers, worked at Goldman, Microsoft, early stage startups, and hedge funds. Seems like a totally different life. I think it was more than 1.5 years ago. And since then, building Fraction AI, and as some of you guys know, we are already in our testnet for some people, and it will be publicly available very soon.
Awesome. Some of these guys actually are in the test nets, and some of them will be very soon. You guys know this. Um, Michael, I sent you another speaking request. Whenever you're ready to join us, we'll be very happy to hear. Shashank, do you think I can ask the first question?
Yeah, we can start. Michael, everybody, anyways, know who Michael is, so he can explain about himself later.
Oh, he's
Can,
here.
can you guys hear me?
Yeah,
Yes, you
yeah.
can.
Oh my God, X Spaces issues. Never a good podcast without it. So great, you guys can hear me finally. Heard everybody's introduction, so maybe I can give a quick intro on myself as well.
Yeah,
Um,
please.
Came out of stealth earlier this year, around February March timeframe. Have since raised about 325 million. What we're doing is we're building the first decentralized AI operating system, because we basically are very worried about a handful of companies controlling all of AI, all of their models, agents, and so on. And so we want to create a counterbalance directly to closed AI by creating decentralized AI, so fully on-chain AI, anything from verifiable, decentralized, permissionless inference, which we now have released in the form of TEML, to later agentic frameworks, to fine tuning, and then eventually even fully on chain model training for large scale models. So, yeah, think of us as a full operating stack, storage, compute, service marketplace. Super excited to be here. Personal background is tech, started in the tech sector as an engineer and technical product manager at Microsoft SAP, and then switched to the business side, worked for Bain& Company and Bridgewater Associates, and then later started a YC-backed unicorn company that we then later sold, and basically started 0G May of last year. Really excited to be here and happy to support everyone from Fraction AI. Very excited about what you guys are building.
Thank you very much. And we really share the mission, like fully. We need to level the playing field. These centralized companies cannot have all the monopoly. But anyways, so let's start our spaces today. And this is going to be like free form. I have some questions, a couple of them from the audience. And then Bidan, Shashank, and Michael, whatever you want, can answer. So the first one is,
Uh,
we
uh,
mostly...
can,
Oh,
can I ask the first question? I
absolutely.
just had
Go for it. Go for it. Yeah.
I had something in mind. So, Michael and Bidan, you guys must have. I think everyone at this point has seen Virtual's AI16Z and similar frameworks where you can launch your agents, which can interact with people on Twitter, can also have access to some other tools. What are your thoughts behind it? As in, how is it good for decentralized AI, and how it is not? Like both sides.
Yeah, happy to take a quick stab at it. First of all, I think any of the experimentation where we include crypto or blockchain based technology with AI, I think is great experimentation. And so, agents having wallets, agents doing on chain transactions, agents kind of playing different types of games, agents contributing to data for open AI models, like super bullish on all of that. Now, the downside is that pretty much all of these agents are built on centralized AI models at this point. So if you look at AI16Z or Virtuals, they're either running OpenAI or Anthropic on the back end. And so that's still a challenge because you're still using a black box model. You have no idea what went into the model, how the model was aligned, where the data came from, what the kind of data cleaning and data labeling aspects of it were. In fact, there was a whole study by Anthropic where they talked about model alignment faking. So basically, what that means is if a model was trained in a specific way, let's say with a political bias, it may tell you that it's not biased just to appease you, but actually it remains biased. And so that's what's called AI model alignment faking. And this is why we believe having like total transparency in that whole AI supply chain, if you will, or data chain, is paramount, because we can't assume that these models will be aligned to our interests because they can fake it. They're now smart enough to be able to do that. And so, yeah, quick summary, very bullish on any experimentation, not bullish on using centralized AI models, and we need to change that. And actually, we're working with Virtuals and AI 16Z and other agent platforms to actually make that happen, have them run on decentralized infrastructure.
Nice. I have a lot of follow-up questions, but first I would like to hear from Vidhan.
Yeah, I mean, Michael said it really well. Like, definitely, these are great experimentations. Definitely early days in how we are doing these things, but agents are the future. And in these experimentations are basically showing us that agents can be another persona in the social layer, but what we will see more and more, that they will become players in the financial layer. They'll become players in the infrastructure layer. They'll become players in like the deeper in the technical stack in general. So that's where we are going with these. And I also agree with Michael is that most of these models are running on are basically centralized models which are powering these agents. That's going to change over time because I think when we get to deeper and deeper of use cases of these agents and they become more and more powerful, that there might will come in future when these centralized model providers will be like, hey, we don't want you to use our model for this kind of use cases anymore. Where do we go from there? And that's where all of these decentralized and permissionless stack or infrastructure that all of us are building comes in. What are your thoughts, Shashank?
Yeah, totally agree with that. I am always in the favor of experiments that show user what the future could look like. Just a quick taste of the future and also build some mind share. So this is just beginning, and it's nice to have agents which are there interacting with other agents, making transactions, sending tokens, launching tokens, and whatnot. So it's easier to just use the models that are out there and use them to get started. And in near future, when the agents are more commonplace, we can just over time build our own decentralized infra and use that to power those agents as we are all building. So yeah, I'm totally bullish on this. But yeah, we definitely need to build decentralized infra for this. And in a way, it's better because agents help build that mindshare. So the infra can develop because there are agents who need that infra. So it's a good way of creating that demand. Adil, I think now you can go
Oh,
with your list of questions.
okay. I thought it was the second. Okay, so my first question is, we've mostly seen agents yapping in social media, right? Like they just like yap and talk. But what are some of the infrastructure key uses that people are sleeping on that's been totally underrated or flying under the radar?
I mean, from an agent perspective, if you think that what AI presents to us is basically the cost of, or the marginal cost of intelligence going down to zero, you should be able to have agents inject in pretty much most things where humans are in the loop today. So think of basically anything that can be automated through a human. An agent should be able to do in the future once we reach AGI, or eventually kind of this idea of ASI, even artificial superintelligence. So can we automate entire work processes? Can we automate away bad user experiences? Like, for example, I don't think anybody wakes up in the morning and says like, oh, I'm so excited about using this bridge from Arbitrum to Base today. It's like such a great user experience. With an agent, you basically just say like, hey, I want to do this on chain, or buy me this kind of meme coin, or do this specific thing, and then the agent can figure out everything that's underneath it. It's like, okay, I need to use this wallet, I need to use this bridge, that's the cheapest. And then once I've done this bridge, gone through this bridge, then essentially I can buy this meme token on this DEX. And so a lot of that complexity can be abstracted away. I mean, I've definitely personally had lots of experiments or experiences in crypto where I'm like, this should take literally 10 seconds. I spend an hour doing this. Like, I just want to use, this new chain or this new game, and it just took me forever. And so agents can create a completely different user experience. It could even come to a point where it's super human-like. I mean, some of the latest TikTok models that have been released, it's almost impossible to tell that it's not a human that's in the back. Speaking with you. So you can interact with them differently. You can ask them to do whatever a human can do in the future. I think the OpenAI O3 model actually is starting to be so good at coding that it's almost basically gold medal level in the International Informatic Olympics. So it's going to be pretty amazing to see what's going to happen in the next few years as agents are going to take more and more of some mundane tasks and annoying tasks that we don't want to do on chain.
Oh,
I
this
think
is
it's a running joke that in Web3, our UX is so bad that no humans can use it, only agents can.
and it's a great pain point that like a lot of people have. So like it solves like actually a tangible problem. Bidan, do you have anything to add or prefer another question? I'm curious to know like your opinion.
Um, Definitely. I mean, again, like I feel like just to reiterate what both Michael and Shashank mentioned here is that I feel like agents were that kind of consumer layer that we were waiting for in Web3. So we have been talking about like, hey, we need a lot of like consumer apps so that it's easier. I think this is it. This is what solves all the problems that we have in terms of UX at least.
Yeah, 100%. And I have a question that I'm sure everybody is wondering here, which is when it comes to infra, what advantages does decentralized AI have over centralized AI?
I guess I should answer with a question. What advantages doesn't it have over centralized AI?
Great point. Great point.
So, I mean, basically, let's fast forward into a future 10 to 20 years from now, and we have some agent or some model like running some big societal system. Let's say it's an airport. Do you want to know what went into your model? And do you want to know how it was aligned? Like who actually contributed the data? What censorship decisions were being made? Like how the model is actually being verified? Like how do I know that the inference that I'm doing is to the model that I'm expecting? And so on. Like if I don't have all these answers, I'm basically putting the trust of and the lives even of a bunch of people in this airport into the hands of some centralized companies. If I don't have full visibility and if I don't have ways of aligning this model in production, that could be the difference between, for example, a hacker faking a different model response in an airplane crashing into another versus, a really smooth running airport. And so initially we have to catch up with centralized AI, and they're, quite advanced in terms of model building. But once we catch up, then we can use all these blockchain superpowers of, AI model alignment and visibility and transparency and so on.
Yeah, totally agreed with that. And historically, power concentrated within just a few individuals has never turned out well. So I agree, we do have to catch up to these open source these closed models that are out there. But we have seen improvements on the open source front. So I believe over time we'll get there. They've had some extra years to work on it. But yeah, performance wise, we are getting there and we will get there over time. But it is necessary than ever that it's not one pin code that is that is handling the decisions that go into making the AI. So it's necessary. It has to be done.
Awesome. Yeah. And these are like some great points. Like, for example, as the proverb goes, if you don't know what's under the hood, you don't know what you're driving. So like, that's a great point against, centralized AI. So here's a question that I think also a lot of people may be asking. How do you guys see the evolution of infra shaping up in the next 12 months, given the fact that evolution in AI is like so fast?
Yeah, I can take a stab at that really quick. And there are so many things that can happen, right? AI industry is so fast, like things move so fast, that it's hard to predict. But one of the things, or one of the directions that we are seeing it go, is that we will see more and more new architectures of open source contributions, which incentivizes open source AI developers to come in and contribute to a shared system or a shared project, which in turn down the line let them monetize their contributions in a verifiable and a privacy preserving way. And that is something I would say is not a consensus at the moment, because it's not that like overblown, that narrative yet. Just like the agent stuff wasn't a consensus like a year ago, but it is now. So I see a lot of that happening very soon. And how I know that? Because we are working in a similar problem, and we're working really hard to get that to the hands of the users, where we're building this almost a new model architecture for open source developers. And we believe that this will be one of the turning points for open source developers, where they can come together and build very powerful open source AI models, which are even better than the ones built by closed source ones, right? Because like even the best AI models, like even the best open source AI models come from these big oligopoly like Meta and OpenAI and whatnot. So that will definitely change. Yeah. I don't know if I muted myself in the middle for a bit.
Hey, nice. You want to talk more about the new architecture you guys are working on?
Yeah, happy to. So we are basically allowing developers to monetize contributing to a model, like by contributing some parameters to it. So there are like different ways you can do that. We're going to publish more. We're going to publish more information on that soon. But I'll start with quickly where we started. We were like, hey, we will. When we first started, like a year and a half ago, almost 2 years ago, we started with the goal that hey, we will allow developers or users to contribute data to an AI model. And when they did that, like we also added some kind of layer, like we converted all this data to vector embedding so that they become homogeneous, because usually other than that, the data is not homogeneous, of course. And when we started with that and started working with the users, we saw like there are a lot of gray areas in the data monetization part. One of the bigger things we saw is that like contributing data is a lot of work, but actually cleaning the data or labeling the data is more of a work. That's where more of the resources go, like something that you guys are doing at Fraction, of course. And then there was this dilemma where a lot of people are contributing data, and a lot of data were private and proprietary. And they were under the impression that that data will be really valuable. But there were other people who were contributing public data, but they were structured and labeled really well. And that were proving to be more valuable than the other part. Like even if it's proprietary but not cleaned or labeled well, it didn't work well. So then we realized that we had to move up the monetization to the model layer. That's how we can kind of change a lot of these ambiguities where, like who captures value is not clear. So that's what we did. Now that is what led us to build this model architecture where developers can get very high quality data, which is structured, which is labeled on platforms like Fraction, which is also verified on platforms like Zero G, and they can come in and they can execute and they can contribute actual model parameters to the model. And then when that model becomes really valuable and makes money, they get a portion of that back automatically. So that's how the model architecture works from a bird's eye view. Not going too technical here, but happy to if you guys are curious.
Yeah, that's pretty cool, man. It's nice to see that even in the model terms, improvements are being made in the decentralized space. So, Michael, are you guys also training your own models at zero gravity, or you are empowering other users to train their models?
Eventually, we'll do a bit of both, and definitely would love to have what Bidan mentioned featured in our kind of service marketplace in the future. We've definitely focused on some aspects of the partnership, but this is definitely super exciting and very new. One of the key challenges for actually doing large-scale on-chain model training, especially for LLMs that are more than, let's say, 10 billion parameters, I think that's the current um, kind of highest model that was trained in a decentralized setting. But even if you look under the hood of there, I think it was Prime Intellect, it was maybe a couple of data centers that were essentially in sync. But now imagine you truly want to have a decentralized model training approach. What if you have, thousands of consumer GPU devices trying to train a particular model? How do you deal with kind of bandwidth constraints? How do you deal with latency constraints? How do you make sure that the parameters sync between the different aspects of the training process? Can you do batch training? Can you do asynchronous training? So there's a lot of research-based questions that are still not fully answered. Once it's answered on a research-based level, then we can start productizing it and making it an engineering problem. So yeah, we're working on some of the research with different organizations like NTU in Singapore or IC3 to figure some of these questions out. I think we may have a research breakthrough in the next few months on that side. But with research, it's always very hard. you might think you're very close, and then all of a sudden it's a dead end. So research doesn't work on the same time scale as engineering. But yeah, very excited about going to fully on-chain training with full transparency and visibility.
Yeah, that
Yeah, that
reminded me
sounds.
of. Yeah,
Sorry, Shashank, go
I
ahead,
was
please.
going through Llama 3 paper, and even those guys, when they have access to like these data centers with thousands of GPUs, even for them, it was not straightforward to pre-train their model. There are engineering issues there as well. The training just stops sometimes. Sometimes there are some faults in GPUs, and then you have to handle those. So even when you have access to GPUs, it's not that straightforward, and those complexities just get exponentially harder when your GPUs are not at single place and you don't own all of them or control all of them. So yeah, it's a huge engineering problem, but before that it's a research problem.
Yeah, definitely. Like one of the things this Web3 infrastructure solve is the coordination problem. So how can you allow these geographically distributed set of actors to come together and collaborate with each other in a way that they're acting in favor of each other instead of being malicious and whatnot? Like how do you kind of align them and to collaborate? And cryptography is one of the only technologies in the world which solves that at scale. We first saw that with Bitcoin, and we are continuing to see that overflow into the infrastructure that we use for artificial intelligence as well.
Yep, agreed. So Antonio is also with us, so we can probably give him a mic too, and then we can move on to the other questions.
Hey, Antonio, welcome for joining us. Hello. You are a speaker. Perhaps you're muted.
Okay, we can move on.
Okay, so talking about people coming from all over the world to build up. Meanwhile, Antonio join us. Shashank, can we tell them a little bit about, Metaverse Machine or Neural Arena, how people from all over the world come in together to train AI models?
Yeah, sure, definitely. So when we started with Fraction AI, our goal was to get data from people, And so we had a platform where people could just come in, label data, and that used to get verified. But the issue with that was it's boring. You have to go and do work, and it quickly gets boring. So our goal was to make it interesting for people. So the first thing we did was made it kind of a game where you had to ask AI some questions, the AI answered, and your goal was to ask difficult questions that the AI answered incorrectly, and that enabled you to identify the gaps in AI's knowledge, and then we use that data to make the model better. Then over time we realized that once we collected enough of that data, we can give that as reference to an LLM, and then LLM can generate more of that data. So it's a way where humans are providing instructions as to how labeling has to be done, and then LLMs are doing that at scale. And if you do that in a competitive manner, you can create better data at higher scale than you would have with just humans or just LLMs. So that's what we are doing now. So on our platform, you can create agents by just providing prompts, and those agents compete with each other to generate the best possible data and win rewards. Yeah, so that's the short version of it.
Perfect. Thank you. Antonio, are you ready to join us?
I think you gave access to someone else,
Oh,
and
okay. I'll find Antonio and I'll give him a listening, speaking role. But meanwhile, what do you guys think about the role that communities play in decentralizing AI training?
I think Michael or Bidhan can answer this.
Yeah, happy to. So when I say community, it's like a people who there are like two types of players in that. I guess depending on what kind of community that you're building, or not two, like there are more, but two types of players in a community like Bagel that we are building here. The one side of the community are actually builders, where these builders are actually coming together and building these open source models, and like in the hope of monetizing it. But there's other side who basically support them with capital, so that like these kind of solutions can be built at scale and can then also they also have an incentive to to participate in that ecosystem. So, and when I say it in that way, it makes it really clear that like community is basically at the heart of it. We are not trying to build like a centralized company which is like extracting as much value as possible and trying to make profit off of the users. It's actually giving the power back to the users, right? And that's where the community comes in. Like they come together and collaborate with each other to take the project to realize its potential. So that's my kind of short take on it. The difference between how these Web3 projects and Web2 projects work is that Web2 projects, they build something within a company and then they sell it to some users and they make money, blah, 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 and that's it. But in Web3, is that a core team probably builds some infrastructure and then this community come together and participate in it and builds a whole ecosystem or protocol together. So totally two different approaches here. And needless to say, we preferred the latter.
Perfect. Just to say, I'm sending invites. Maybe there's something wrong with the app. Sending invites to speak, but it's not working so far. I'll keep on it. I'm really sorry. I don't know. I think it's like some glitch or something.
That's okay. Michael, do you want to add something to Bidhan's answer?
Sorry, my connection cut out for a second. Do you mind repeating?
It was about how do you look at users who want to contribute to the platform?
Yeah, there's many different levels of looking at it. You can look at it from a kind of supply and demand side. So on the supply side, for any decentralized network, what's obviously super important is to have people that are running nodes. And those nodes, depending on what we're doing, is kind of different flavors. So for example, you can have validator nodes on the chain because you need essentially validators to prove that the proof of stake consensus is working well. Then on the storage side, you need storage kind of network nodes. You need, let's say you're actually doing model alignment, then you need alignment type of nodes. Then on the compute side, you need different types of GPU providers that can then provide the compute so that when you're interacting with the network, that you have the necessary resources to even do things like inference and fine tuning and so on. So very important to kind of bootstrap the supply side first from my perspective. And that's generally done through testnet or incentivization, or in some cases non-incentivization, so that people can just experiment kind of with this new technology. So that's the whole supply side. Then on the demand side, I think I agree that we essentially need to make it as easy as possible for builders to come into the space, whether it's from Web 2 or from Web 3. In Web 3, we have a very limited set. It's less than 100,000 builders. And so I think a better strategy is, rather than fighting over a bunch of builders who don't know like which network to launch at, is to attract new builders from Web 2 that then see like, oh, hey, this is a better way of building AI. This is a better way of interacting with AI that's fully transparent, permissionless, decentralized. I can completely verify what's happening. This is a better path forward. And that's kind of what we're betting on, is kind of that second set of users. Of course, we want to make sure we work with really great builders to help us build decentralized applications that help us build really interesting use cases for like the storage or the AI, the compute layer. But we definitely want to attract more builders from the AI side into the space.
Perfect. This is great to hear.
Yeah, so I have follow-up questions regarding this. So have you guys have you guys seen the builders on your problems face problems regarding the UX, and which also affected their engagement? And if you did, what did you guys do to resolve that?
I mean, UX is going to be difficult in Web3 compared to Web 2. It's so easy going to OpenAI and having all of the API access there, and all you have to do is a few lines of code, and then you can start prompt engineering, whatever model OpenAI offers. So getting to that level of user experience is very hard in Web3, because we've got hundreds of companies building in Web3 and AI, and they're all building a piece of that particular stack. How do we put them all together so it's like super easy and simple for somebody getting up and running to have the same level of experience? And so what we're doing is we've essentially built a service marketplace where we can work with the best builders in the space, like Fraction and Vagel, to make it very simple for people to get up and running and then utilize those services essentially through one interface, one SDK. So that's been our solution to it. There's still difficulties in basically needing to deal with RPC nodes and instead of like APIs. But eventually what we can do is we can put kind of API wrappers on top of those RPC calls to even abstract that away. And then if we think even further forward, maybe we have agent helpers that just help people kind of get into the space more easily and write a lot of the baseline code that's important to kind of like bootstrap projects. So that's kind of how we're thinking and approaching it.
Oh, nice. What about you, Vidhan?
Yeah, I mean, UX is definitely a problem in decentralized infrastructure, for sure. We have been trying to solve it by giving our user base a really Web 2-like experience. So how did we do that? So we recently launched the first platform, which utilizes the Bagel model architecture. It's called the Bakery. It's bakery.dev if anyone here is interested in looking at it. And the bakery.dev uses the bagel architecture to allow developers to fine-tune models and add new information to it, and then monetize it from that. And we went almost out of our way to make it as Web2-like as possible. So the developers underneath like the developers who are using it, they don't need to know like what the infrastructure is doing underneath, where the compute is coming from, how the data is stored, is it decentralized, is it not, how their contribution are approved, like is it ZK or is it some kind of other proof, or what kind of ZK proving scheme that we're using. All of those things that we had to think about to build this are actually abstracted away from the users. And that is why it's actually getting really popular among Web2 AI developers. So I think that's the way forward. Like we use all the superpowers we have in the Web3 ecosystem or the cryptography ecosystem to build all these amazing technologies underneath. But at the user layer or application layer, we have to make it as familiar as possible for them so that it's easy for them to be onboarded and start reaping the benefits of it. So that's our approach to it, but it's definitely harder to do than doing it in Web2, for example. But that's what we have to do, right? Like there's no other way.
Yeah, really love how you guys are doing it, and it actually reminds me of Polymarket because a lot of people use that and they don't really know that it's running on blockchain. So that's the kind of immersion we should all aim to have. That there is blockchain there, which is keeping things decentralized and not controlled by one authority. But it should not be any hindrance or an excuse for hindrance in UX. Now, just coming back to the agents, if you look at the current set of agents, the famous ones that we have, AIXBT, Zerbro, and so on, if you had to add like one tool or one extra functionality in them, what would it be and why?
I guess I'll cheat a little bit by saying that they can't transfer files until we've made that a possibility for both AI 16Z and virtuals. So, and the importance of that is like, how do you, for example, do some kind of, let's say, analysis work and some piece of work, and how do you share it with another agent that can then kind of take that work and then go further on it or have certain restricted permissions on it and so on. So that's super important to have essentially file-based system that can support a lot of that. And then beyond that, I would say what's still missing is like a really strong identity layer. How do we distinguish between who's a human and who's an agent kind of on chain? And there's certainly approaches to it, but then how do we go one step further and say like, who does this agent belong to? Who is this agent doing work for? Um, and then how do we figure out a really simple permissioning scheme so that you can even change it on a per job level or on a per time level? So there's a lot of this kind of fine tuning and dialing that still needs to be done to give them really strong permissions and access so that they can do really useful work for us over time.
Yeah, nice. So I think Bidan, you guys have also worked on agent fingerprinting, if I'm not wrong. First, I would like to answer the question, and then you can probably speak about that.
Yeah, happy to. Shashank, could you mind repeating the question? I also had like um, I think the
Yeah,
internet
sure.
connection
So,
was a bit
so the question was, you must have seen the famous agents that are out there, Zerbro, AIXBT, Luna Virtuals, or any of those. So, if you were to add just one functionality or one tool they could use, which one would it be?
Yeah, they should be using open source models, and the model should be built on an architecture where the developers of the models are being rewarded for the usage of that model through the agent. Um, I'm biased, of course, but that's exactly what we're building. So kind of
Yeah,
stealing the
I
answer
mean,
from Michael.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely all agree to that. But what I was asking is one extra functionality, something they could do. So, for example, Michael suggested that because of them, these agents can send files to each other. So, a feature like that, something new which they can't do right now.
Yeah, I think, as I mentioned, that now we are seeing all of these agents in our social layer, like on social media, and they're being part of the Twitter community and whatever discussions that were happening. But I am more interested in making them part of the deeper infrastructure layer, right? As I mentioned, like the decentralized finance
Mhm.
layer, or even, like deeper infrastructure layer, which are making other agents, right? And like agents making other agents. That's super interesting. Like that's how you don't have to be a human sitting around and making 1,000 different agents to do 1,000 different things. Like how about you make one and that does all the work for you and builds you an army of agents which are basically doing totally different thing. Maybe you run your whole company, right? So those are the things I am personally more interested in. So apologies, it's not just one specific thing, but that's the direction I want them to go. Is that more than being part of the social layer, it's like being more part of the infra layer.
Yeah, so being able to own the infra and launch other agents which can do other tasks and not just being part of the
Exactly.
social.
And it can be even a deeper level too. For example, when we say launch other agents, usually we mean, wrap another RAG system on top of some OpenAI model. It's not like that. Like when I say they making other agents, like making other agents from scratch. It's like how humans make other human, right? From scratch. So it's similar way. And there are a lot of like a frontier research area that are being explored. Like some of them we are exploring ourselves for that. For example, we are exploring with a technology called hyper network, and it's basically a technology which is used for almost 3D printing a neural network. So you don't have to train a totally new neural network, but you can just generate the parameters of a new network from another one, like basically an AI model kind of 3D printing another AI model. So those kind of things, like deep infra layer, which also allows for more customization.
Yeah, that sounds really cool. So coming back to Michael, you were saying you're telling about that feature of sending files. Can you talk more about that? Which kind of files are allowed to be sent? Where are they stored, and how it's decentralized, how it's powered by zero G, and so on.
Yeah, it's really anything that can be a file can be sent at this point between agents, and then the agents can do something useful with it. Whether it's a text file, PDF file, image file, like anything is really supported. So they're stored directly on zero G storage. And storage actually turns out to be a very, very hard problem to get right. Um, so if you look at kind of what Filecoin and even SIA, which is one of the kind of early experiments in StoreJ and Arweave have done, they've all kind of chipped away at the problem, but they haven't fully figured it out because even Filecoin you can only use for really for cold storage. If you're trying to do things where you're using files in a kind of hop swap type of manner where you need to consistently have files available and shareable and quickly downloadable and so on, Filecoin won't work. It's just not built for AI workloads. And actually making that happen is a very complex problem. Nobody else has really figured that out in a fully decentralized manner. And that's why when you talk to most builders in the Web3 AI space, if you ask them where do you store your models and everything, they basically say like, oh, it's like AWS Web3, AWS S3, and Google Cloud or whatever other centralized storage provider, because it's just such a hard problem to get right at the performance that you expect. So we've recently done well, actually, before I go there, so what we've essentially done is Ming, who's our CTO and co-founder, he spent 11 years at Microsoft Research and is an expert in scalability, kind of AI algorithms as well as distributed storage. So he wrote a couple papers called Tango and Curfew, where basically you build further abstractions on top of log storage, or what is cold storage in the Filecoin case. Then we've built a key value store on top of that. And then on top of that, even a transactional way of interacting with files. And so what's now possible is you can even build things like Google Docs fully on chain with the transactional storage. And so that's a major breakthrough because that's just a very, very hard problem to solve in a decentralized system. Because how do you deal with multiple storage providers? What if the storage provider goes offline? What happens to your file? What if a storage provider is adversarial and they want to withhold your data? They have the data, but they just don't want to serve it to you because, I don't know, they decided I'm going to be an adversary now. So you have to deal with all of these types of edge cases and issues in order to make that happen. So really proud of Ming and our tech team for basically figuring this out. And to go a little bit deeper into that, the key value store is essentially what you need. If you're familiar with key value, it's basically you look, instead of having it be a relational database, you just look at something by its key. So you say like, I don't know, color, and then the corresponding values are like red, blue, and so on. And so that's what that enables for you, kind of fully on chain, if you will. And on top of that, that actually is then very useful to build a vector database, which is then used by AI type of applications like embeddings and so on. And so now all of that's enabled fully on chain. So a lot of heavy lifting from an infrastructure standpoint needed to be done to make this happen. And then recently we actually did a benchmark test, and we tested almost 2 gigabytes per second in terms of throughput, download and upload, which is essentially a world record for decentralized systems. And so now you can see that these decentralized systems can actually be used to store models, to run kind of file sending, file downloading, hotter forms of storage, agents actually utilizing these systems in a fully decentralized manner. And so we're super excited about that. Why does this matter though, in the end, is if, for example, you store your decentralized model or your open source model somewhere in Amazon, and Amazon one day says and wakes up and they say, hey, we actually want to monetize our model. You can't store this here. So they can censor you, essentially. And you don't want to be censored. So where do you store it? You just store it in decentralized storage, essentially. So that's a bit of a long answer, but I wanted to give enough context because your question was really good around the detail.
Yeah, I mean, really, congrats for your achievement and building something so cool. I have personal experience with this. So when we were starting, I was actually considering using either Arweave or Filecoin for storing our datasets, but the throughput was just not there. So we had to use AWS, and even now we are looking at some decentralized ways to store our datasets, because our goal was to first create data sets that actually make models better, and then we can sort these issues out or reach out to other people who are solving these problems. So really great to see the kind of work you guys are doing.
Yeah, definitely excited to host your model sets in the future. And by the way, you can save up to 80% with them as well. So there's not only a decentralization benefit.
Yeah, sure. So Adil, if you have any
Curious,
questions.
actually, Shashank, I want to kind of revert that question back to you. Like, what kind of applications do you want to see being built on the agent layer?
I would say as a low hanging fruit, we can go somewhere with DeFi. So one of the use cases could be managing liquidity. So in Uniswap V3, you can set ranges where you want your liquidity to be, but you have to manually change it from time to time. Otherwise, your liquidity doesn't get used and you won't earn any yield on that. So you can have an AI and you can suggest, you can have an agent and you can provide what your risk and reward should be. And that agent can just manage your liquidity based on what kind of returns you want and what kind of risk you are okay with. So that can be like the one use case I can think on top of my head. But even in DeFi, there can be a lot of good use cases. I wouldn't go with predicting markets because that's super difficult. I've done that like my previous career. But even other than that, you can manage a lot of liquidity using AI.
Perfect. We arriving at the top of the hour, so I want to ask if you guys want to hear from the audience, or I should just like wrap it up, wish everybody Merry Christmas, and
I think we should let audience ask questions.
Perfect. Okay, dear followers, everybody joining us, feel free to ask questions, just like raise your hand, and we're here to answer. And meanwhile, don't forget to follow all the speakers, our CEO Shashank, Michael, and Bidan, and their companies, Zero G Labs, and also Bagel. Okay. Here, Primex, you're a speaker now. I sent you an invite. Feel free to ask us your questions. Hello? Hi, Primex.
Okay, G and everyone, can you guys hear me?
Hey, man, all good?
Okay, so I'm very, very excited about the project and everything that is going on. So I would love to ask a few questions. Okay, so the first one is when the mainnet goes live, because currently I know that there's a testnet phase going on. So when the mainnet goes live, is it going to be a token launch or something related to that?
Yeah, I think the question wasn't for us because we don't have the testnet live. So I guess it's for Michael and Shashank more.
Yeah, for us, we're planning sometime Q1 of next year for the first version of mainnet to go live, and it's still mainnet V1 or mainnet beta, if you want to call it that way. We'll have a modified kind of off-the-shelf consensus, which still gets us to really fast speeds on the storage and VA side and so on. But it's not the ultimate solution on the execution layer and compute layer. So mainnet V2, hopefully Q3 of next year after that.
Yeah,
Okay,
so
thank you.
we also have
Thank you very much.
yeah, so we also have kind of similar timelines. Q1, late Q1, probably first version of mainnet, and then the next ones.
Okay, thank you. That really answers my question.
Thank you, Primex. If anybody else has any questions, feel free to raise your hand, and we're here for you. All right, it seems like this is the end for today. I wish everybody Merry Christmas. And again, please follow our speakers. And do you guys want to add something to close?
I would like to
Nick?
thank everyone for showing up, especially Michael and Vedhan on such a short notice, and they just accepted whatever the time we were available. So thanks a lot to them showing up, and thanks a lot for everyone for showing up at in our second session. And please come for the next ones as well.
Yeah, I'll just say Merry Christmas and thanks for inviting us, Faction AI and Shashank, and super excited about partnering together, and definitely big thanks to our audience for listening, and excited about making AI public good all together. Let's decentralize AI.
Thank you. Let's decentralize AI. Do you guys have one last question for Grapes? Grapes, if you don't mind?
Hi. Yeah, hello everyone. I have a question. What do you believe makes Fraction AI agents stand out compared to other agents? Because there are so many to choose from. And I'd like to know, how are you planning to grow the community and encourage people to use your AI agents? Like, what's the marketing strategy behind?
Yeah, sure. So in our case, agents compete with each other to create data that will create better AI. So agents are competing with each other, generating data, and that data is used to train better AI models. And these agents are powered by human insights. So no two agents are similar. Because if you want to say write tweets, your instructions will be different from someone else. And all of these agents are competing with each other to generate the best possible data that will create agents of the future. So it's not just about the agents that are there right now. It's about human insights that are powering those agents to create better agents for the future.
I think this is an amazing answer. And thank you, everybody, for joining. Please follow also Michael and Bidan. And here's to decentralization. Let's have an amazing 2025. All of us share the same mission. Thank you to the community for joining us. And see you next time.
See you guys. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.